Hey everybody, this is Andrew here with the Tower e-bike repair shop, and today we are going to be assembling an Aventon Level, a city-style commuter bike. If you didn't see our last video of us unboxing it, be sure to check that one out. And so last video we unboxed this, got it all wrapped up. So this is our first look at the bike, sort of partially assembled. Gotta say, from a frame perspective, it's a good looking bike. It's definitely aesthetically pleasing. Let's get building and, check out some other features on it. So I'm gonna start right here at the front wheel. It's where I always like to start off. So one of the really nice things about this bike is it comes with a through axle, so that's super nice. It's like this through axle, you unscrew this right part, and then the whole rest of the axle slides through. This part is just a plastic guard, so that can be disposed of. And then the other part you want to do before you get that wheel slotted in, you've got to be sure to pull this brake chip out. Now, brake chip, super handy, super helpful. I always recommend holding on to these. If you ever take your front wheel off, super handy to slide that in there. Because the last thing you want to happen is, have nothing in between those calipers, brake actually gets squeezed, and then your pads are closed. So be sure to hold on to this, just set it to the side. I'm going to grab our front wheel and slide this right into the dropouts, and make sure that disc goes right in between the caliper there on the right. And one of the super nice things about through axles is we don't really have to worry if it's lined up properly, because that through axle will make sure that it's always straight inside there. And you might not get it lined up right well at first, but sure to just slide that wheel a little up and down. We're trying to get that through, and eventually you'll get through. And again, just sort of lift it up, get it straightened, and get that through axle through. Whew, a little stiff in there. There we go. And a lot of times when you're doing that, it's obviously the wheel may be a little cockeyed, and this through axle is super straight. So, occasionally getting it originally lined up, maybe a little bit work, but once it's lined up straight, that whole thing will go in easy. Then you take this right cap part, or I guess it'd be the left side of the bike. It's on my right now, but it'd be the left side of the bike. Just thread that bad boy on. And get a good balance here, because obviously this left flange has to go up. And just like that, boom, your front wheel's on. And because of that through axle, you do not have to worry, about, oh man, did I get that in the dropouts all the way? Through axle takes care of that for you. Next up, we're gonna get this handlebar and stem installed. First thing we're gonna do is we're gonna take this top cap off, and that should be a 5mm. So of course, with your bike, you should have gotten this Aventon, multi-tool set, which is pretty handy. I, of course, have all my own tools, so I'm gonna use those. I've got my 5mm Allen key here. And we're gonna head over to this top cap right here. Now, be super careful with this top cap, because this top cap is holding the entire front fork in. So once you take this top bolt off, if you're not holding, this whole fork and wheel is just gonna slot right out. So usually recommend, if you're gonna do that part, kind of either hold the wheel up or get it so the wheel's resting on the ground. Just something giving some pressure upwards while this top cap is off. All right, now that top cap is off, we're just gonna rotate that stem, get it slotted right on here. So it looks like, even just setting it on the ground, it looks like it moved up a bit. So when you get ready to install that stem, all right, so you saw what happened there, was this bottom part kind of shimmied down, and as a result, all these spacers went up. So you can see there, you can see that space. I'm just gonna push all those back down. So now that I've got that all in place, I'm gonna put this top cap on, and then thread that back down, and now that'll hold everything tight and prevent it from all falling out on us. You want to be sure to get that top cap nice and tight, because that's where your headset is. That's going to make sure that this fork does not feel loose while you're riding, and you feel nice and secure and tight. So we're going to tighten it more towards the end, but that's good for right now. These handlebars definitely need a little bit of extra rotation there once the stem is installed, because it appears that when this bike comes, this front stem plate is already mounted, but it's very loose. So you will have to rotate these around until they're in their, proper ergonomic position. So right now I'm going to tighten down this front stem faceplate. So I'm going to grab my 4mm Allen key. So one of the things you also want to be super careful of, and we've talked about it in other videos, is if you look inside, look at this stem, see on the top, we have bunches of space here at the top, but then if we look underneath, this space here is really teeny tiny. So we're gonna need to get that redistributed so the top spacing and the bottom spacing are much more even. Tighten these top sections down quite a bit while not touching the bottom ones. Now what I'm probably gonna have to do is I'm probably gonna have to loosen those bottom bolts to redistribute that spacing from the bottom to the top. Now I'm not using this Aventon tool to properly torque down. I'm just doing some general tightening and loosening right now. To properly torque down all these bolts, you definitely wanna have a proper torque wrench. That can be purchased, most online. You can purchase it on towerebikes.com or from your local bike shop. But having everything down to the proper torque spec is super important. Again, right now, this is just general tightening, but once the bike is done, we're gonna go all the way through the bike and make sure everything is torqued down to spec before this bike hits the road. Some nice solid metal platform pedals here for us. They're nice and sturdy. Again, the spindle feels okay, but they're good construction. They're solid pedals. Now remember, when you're installing these, be sure to be aware of which one is right, which one is left. Left side is reverse threaded, so if you try to install the right pedal on that side or the left pedal on the right side, you're gonna strip out both the pedal and the crank, and you're gonna have a bad time. So let's head over to the bike. Now, one of the other cool things is it appears that Aventon puts these little stickers on here on the crank arms, right where you put the pedal in, so you can know exactly which way to thread these on. So I got the right side pedal. Now, what I like to do to remember is if you just pedal backwards while holding that in, it'll always thread in the correct way. And this pedal backwards works on both the right side and the left side. And then to take it off, you would just pedal forward while holding onto that. You have to use a pedal wrench for that side, but that's the basics of it. Let's swing over to the left side here. And again, this is the really important one. The left side is reverse threaded, so you gotta be extra careful when installing that to be sure you're using the proper pedal and you're threading it in the right way. So remember, just a nice pedal backwards will help thread those pedals on, no matter which side you're on. As long as you have the corresponding pedal to the right side, you'll be perfect. Just get that pedal wrench on there, and again, pedal backwards. We'll get that all tightened up. And that last pressure. And you wanna be sure to get those pedals on there extra tight. It's one of the things that can happen. Like I said earlier, you pedal backwards to get these on, but you pedal forward to take them off. So what can actually happen while you ride, if you didn't tighten them down enough, is as you pedal, they will gradually start to unthread and loosen up over time. And when that happens, this will start to wiggle around more and it'll start to bore out your crank arms. So always be aware of that. All right, so now we're going to install this front fender. So it's pretty cool. They do include a front fender with the bike. So we're gonna get that installed here. And it appears that they use a 4mm Allen key to get those tightened down. First thing we're gonna do is we're gonna undo this bolt at the very top of the fork. Then we just wanna get that fender snug right there on the back. Then you want to thread that bolt through, put the washer on, put the nut on there, and then get that threaded on. So it is an interesting point now that, bear in mind, this is the only tool that Aventon gives you. However, to get this really tightened down, you're gonna need a 10mm wrench to get this spot held down while you tighten this bolt. Because what you're gonna see is, I'm gonna use this to tighten it down. At a certain point, this nut's just gonna start spinning around without having a corresponding wrench to hold on to. So you are gonna have to, either get your own pliers, wrench, something to hold that down to tighten that, because a wrench is not included in this box. So let's get down here. So once we get that top bolt somewhat started, then we're gonna come around to the back side here where we have these two bolts here. These will be what the struts on the fenders mount to. So these are a 4mm. Let's get these unscrewed here. And this may be something, when you're installing, you may wanna do this before you install the wheel, because obviously, I installed the wheel first, and it's caused me obviously to have some tight spacing here. So when you're building it, you may want to install this fender before you put the front wheel on. All right, so now that those bolts are out, I can now take these struts and get them mounted on here. So just based on the struts that I'm holding right now, you are gonna have to bend these to a certain extent. So we're gonna get this right side started just nice and lightly. We'll get this bolt started. There's quite a bit of tension fighting me here, so getting it lined up is a little tricky. But once I get it started, I'll be all good to go. So I got the right side started. I'm gonna give it a couple turns here, just to make sure it's fully threaded in. Don't want that popping off on me while I try to adjust the other side here. Let's head to this other side. So you can see I'm having a lot of tension getting this one into place. Like I said, there's a lot of tension pushing back on this. So it's definitely a two-hand job, that's for sure. All right, got them in. Just gonna tighten these down. So one of the other things you're also gonna wanna do is make sure that that front wheel, front tire is not rubbing on that fender. So right now, the only noise we're hearing is from this front brake, which will be adjusting a little bit. It's a close fit, but it's not rubbing on the fender, which is always good news. And we can always shimmy it up a little bit here while we tighten it down as well at the top. So let's just go through and tighten all these fender bolts down. All right, got the struts installed. Let's hit that top one. Like I said, you are gonna need a 10mm wrench. All right, so I got that 10mm wrench here. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna get that held right over that nut in the front. And while I'm doing that, tighten here on the rear. Remember, it's a 5 compared to the 4s that are on the struts. So getting this balanced and pushed up while keeping everything held in place is a little difficult, so maybe kind of tough, but you saw I was able to do it. Get that tightened down. Perfect, and it's silent with the fender, so that is fantastic news for us. One last little bit of assembly here. So you want to be sure to power up that screen. So you can see here we have this little end piece, a little green end that comes right off there. There's a little cap on there, so be sure to pull that off. Then if you look here on the sort of cable bundle, we can see there's a loose end here. We just take that cap off. Then you can see there's a green innard. So green to green, those match up. If you look, you can see little arrows on the back. Be sure to get those and click it in. And that front screen is now plugged in, ready to roll. That is just about everything to install on your Aventon Level e-bike. Overall, it's a pretty nice build. You know, pretty straightforward to assemble. This fender's probably going to be the most difficult part of it, just getting it all lined up. But aside from there, it builds up pretty easy, pretty straightforward. Thanks for joining us. Hope you have a great day and, you know, enjoy riding. Bye.